I thought it was time that we have a video in which we just talk about how to survive if you are an aspiring writer or an established writer, or you think you want to get into this. And so I'm just going to give you a few small pieces of advice from the publishing trenches. First thing is, it's so important to remember that all roads lead to writing. Okay, and that sounds super simple, but I'll get asked all the time from aspiring writers who are maybe querying, trying to get their first agent, or they're on sub to publishers at any stage, and they'll say, what should I be doing now? And I say, you should be writing. Because 90% of this business is waiting. And while you're waiting, you should also be writing. It's a very, very simple logic. Think about it. If your book sells, you're going to need another book. If your book doesn't sell, you're going to need another book. If your book sells well, you're going to need another book. And if your book doesn't sell well, you're going to need another book. No matter what you do, if you want to stay in this industry, if you want to have a career, you need more than one book. For the vast majority of authors, their names and their careers and their livelihoods are not made by a single book or even by a single series. They're made by a catalog, by a bibliography, by a full shelf, you know? And it's so important to remember that. And I think, yeah, it's really hard to write when you're waiting on news or when you're waiting and hoping. It can get very tangled. But the most proactive thing you can do when you're waiting, which is what we do 90% of the time in publishing, we're waiting on something, is to keep writing. Now, caveat. If you are trying to get a literary agent or your book is on sub to publishers, do not write a sequel to the thing that you are writing or that you are trying to get sold, because that's just investing more hope and more heart in something that's not a done deal yet. So if you're pursuing traditional publishing and you're like, well, Victoria told me I should be writing. You should be writing, but you should be writing something new. One of the reasons it's so important to keep writing is because publishing throws you a lot of curveballs, right? Very few roads in publishing are straight. And the most power and agency that you can give yourself as a creator is to keep creating content and to have more in your pocket. This is the business side of it. So it's the ABW, right? Always be writing. Very early on in my career, had a really bad hiccup in my publishing road, in my path. There was a boulder in the way. And the only thing that saved me from coming to an absolute standstill in my publication journey was that I had been writing. I had been writing the whole time behind the scenes. And so when things fell apart for me on my publishing road, when things got really messy, I was able to say, okay, I have this other book. Let's do something with this book. I had something. I was ready. You always have to have something next. So if you're sitting there and you're waiting on something and you're twiddling your thumbs, stop twiddling your thumbs and start typing. Start writing something. It will help for your sanity. It will help for your career. All roads lead to writing. Next issue. There is no such thing in this world as a book for everyone. It does not exist. Find your favorite book and go on to Goodreads and read the 1-star reviews. Now, as readers, we can accept this fact. As writers, for some reason, we get stuck on this idea of writing a book that appeals to everyone. If you try to write a book that appeals to everyone, you will write a book that appeals to no one, least of all yourself. This ties into my big point. No matter where you are in your publishing journey, write for yourself first and foremost. And I said in an earlier video that you are your first reader. You are your first critic. You are your first champion. You must be there for yourself. And the reason you do this is because, as I said, there are so few straight roads in publishing. There are so many ways for you to feel disappointed. The greatest way to ensure that you're unhappy is to write for other people instead of writing for yourself. You're like, oh, I hear there's this trend. Never write to trend. First of all, you're already 2 years behind if you're trying. If you sit there and you try to figure out what other people want, if you try to figure out that book for everyone, it's not going to work, and you're going to be the one that ends up suffering from it, right? Because think about it. If you invest a year or 2 years in a book that you're not passionate about, you just think it'll sell well. If it doesn't sell well, or if it doesn't sell at all, you're going to see that as wasted time. If you are truly writing for yourself first and foremost, if you're writing with yourself in mind as the primary audience, it's never going to feel like wasted time. You might be disappointed that it doesn't sell, but you will never feel like those were years or months that you lost. Okay? The only way to feel like you have lost time is for you to sacrifice that time by doing something that you're not passionate about. And the other piece of that, when I talk about that book that I was writing when everything went badly, the book that saved me, okay, that was Vicious, which was my first adult novel. It was a book I never intended to get published. I wrote it to kind of rejuvenate, to revive my love of writing. I wrote that book for myself, and more than anything else, what I hear from readers is, I feel like that book was written for me, right? So what you discover is, by not trying to write a book for everyone, by writing a book for someone, specifically for you, you will find there is an audience, because there are other people out there who will be passionate in the same way that you're passionate. They will either like the same things that you like, or they will be able to feel your enthusiasm coming through the page. There is nothing to lose by writing for yourself first, and there's everything to lose by not writing for yourself, okay? So those are some lessons from the publishing and the writing trenches. All roads lead to writing. There is no such thing as a book for everyone, and you should be writing for you. So if you're stuck, if you're trying to figure out like why you're lacking passion, or if you're even trying to figure out what to write, sit down and think, what do I want to read? That is what I do. Ever since Vicious, every single time I sit down to write, I think, what do I want to read? What would make me happy to read? And then I write that. That's all it is. That's what Vicious is. That's what Shades of Magic is. That's what this Savage Song is. They're just books I wanted to read. Oh my God, did you hear that little sneeze? That's Oliver. He has a cold. He has a cold. He's feeling very sorry for himself. Maybe he won't scratch my face off today. But only because you have a cold.